Hello, all. My name is Gabrielle Welsh. I am the managing editor of The Scene and the stage director for Dialogues this year. I want to thank you all for joining us at the 2019 edition of EXPO Chicago, the International Exhibition of Contemporary and Modern Art. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Dialogues, presented in partnership with the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Dialogues offers panel discussions, conversations, and provocative artist discourse with leading artists, curators, designers, and arts professionals. Within the modernist imagination, utopias once functioned as fictitious sites of yearning, not necessarily as artificial spaces, but as indicators of what could be. Within a 21st century context, concepts of utopia have remained relevant, fueling discussions within fields of politics, art, architecture, and culture. The 2019 Dialogue Symposium on Utopia gathers scholars and artists to discuss the various ways in which utopias are continuously being imagined through a series of panels, performances, and book signings that examine how the ideal can exist within contemporary structures. Our first discussion centers around the work of artist Emilia Kabakov and her husband Ilya. Joined in discussing the duo's career of work on utopia, history, and memory is Matthew Jesse Jackson, chair of the Department of Visual Arts at the University of Chicago, Sheikha Hoor Al-Qasimi, the president and founding director of the Sharjah Art Foundation, and their moderator, Jill Snyder, the executive director of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Cleveland. A special thank you to our partner, the Art Newspaper. Following this discussion, there will be another iteration of Concert for a Fly, which you hopefully just heard, and a book signing to our left. Please join us in welcoming our first discussion of the fair. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jill Snyder, Executive Director of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Cleveland, and I'm very honored to serve as moderator for this panel. I've been privileged to know Emilia and Ilya Kabakov since 2002, although I have admired them since the late 1980s as a student of the Russian avant-garde, and especially when experiencing the astonishing exhibition 10 Characters at the Hirshhorn Museum in 1990. In 2004, together, we produced at my museum the exhibition The Teacher and the Student, Charles Rosenthal and Ilya Kabakov, a faux Beaux-Arts style painting installation that functioned as a history lesson, morality tale, social critique, and personal homage for an artist who witnessed the failed experiment of the Soviet Union as a citizen and an emigre. In this installation, Kabakov laid forth the artistic fruits of two fictional painters, Charles Rosenthal and Ilya Kabakov, the artist doppelganger. Disguised as a retrospective in a somewhat decrepit regional Soviet museum, the fictional veil of this exhibition created a strange and, I would say, eerie experience for our visitors. We furthered the fiction of this total installation by placing on temporary view a monumental painting by Charles Rosenthal in the 19th century galleries of the nearby world-renowned Cleveland Museum of Art. Strategically facing a Jacques-Louis David painting, Rosenthal achieved an historical importance that exceeded even Kabakov's aspirations for this fictional, under-recognized Russian artist. Thus, his appreciation of grand and heroic gestures wielded by minor talents was given full play in this presentation of a fictional character among the artistic titans of the past. With this memory in mind, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists to explore the Kabakov's investigation of utopian ideals, which has culminated in the Ship of Tolerance on display in the Navy Yard, in the Navy Pier Yard now, a project designed to educate and connect youth of different continents, cultures, and identities through the language of art. To my right, Emilia Kabakov began working with Ilya when he relocated to America in the 1980s, late 1980s. The Kabakovs have produced work together for over 30 years, imagining utopic possibilities that originated from painting to a new genre known as total installation. Conceived in Russia at the height of the Cold War, early ideas within the Kabakovs' works have served as monuments to universal themes such as history and memory. Throughout their career, the duo has placed utopia as a potential outcome and influence of their work. Hoor Qasimi is president and director of Sharjah Art Foundation, established in 2009 as a catalyst and advocate for the role of art in Sharjah, the UAE, regionally and internationally. In 2003, she co-curated Sharjah Biennial 6 and has since continued as biennial director. An accomplished curator, she has curated major exhibitions mounted by Sharjah Art Foundation and presented in museums throughout the world. She also was curator for the UAE Pavilion at the 56th Venice Biennale in 2015. Matthew Jesse Jackson is chair of the Department of Visual Arts at the University of Chicago. He is the author of the experimental group Ilya Kabakov, Moscow Conceptualism, Soviet Avant-Gardes, editor and co-translator of Ilya Kabakov on Art, as well as co-author and curator of the book and exhibition Vision and Communism, and contributed an essay for the exhibition I mentioned that accompanied the teacher and the student. So in this symposium on utopia, we've been asked to discuss the various ways in which utopias are continuously being imagined and coexist within contemporary structures. Emilia is going to speak about the work of the Kabakovs, and then I will invite some thoughts from our two other panelists. Thank you.
Okay, it does work. First of all, you just introduced us, and I want to say that we're more known in Europe than in the United States for some strange reasons, although we live here more than for 30 years. We were born in Russia and Soviet Union. We live in the United States for a very long time. We're a national treasure of Japan. I don't know why, but that's how the story goes. We usually do installations, but Ilya did painting before. He is a highly trained artist, painter, which in the United States a lot of people don't know, because even before he left Soviet Union, his works ended up in private collections in the museums, mostly in Europe, in Switzerland and France. So, because he come here, when he come here, knowing that context in which his work will be shown in the West is not going to be completely understood, or being afraid it's not going to be understood, he invented total installation, which is based on atmosphere. When people enter the space, it's a secluded space created by us, painted, different painting, drawings, any kind of media could be used in total installation. And it's completely different from the space of the museum, so we're famous for doing total installations. Not so famous for paintings here, but I have to tell you that yes, there is a lot of paintings starting from as early as 1954. I was very lucky just buy one back, which nobody knew it by Kabakov, and even if you knew it's Kabakov, they were thinking it's a fake, which was original. Utopia, we work with human feelings, we work with human fears, and they're universal. Everybody say very often that Kabakov's work is based on Russian reality, which is absolutely not true. It's misconception. It's based on human things that are universal, that are, very common for everybody, every person in the world. Yes, it is based and it's come from Russian culture, which is completely different from reality. It's not real. Ilya never live in communal apartment, but a lot of works about people living in communal apartment, but it's about people. And they live like this in such a condition, being oppressed by government, by family, by different circumstances of life all around the world, not only in Soviet Union. Of course, it's about Soviet Union because we know this culture better, we know the life better. But being for so many years outside, we mostly work with completely different subject by now. It's about future, it's about utopia, it's about our childish fears of unknown, of different cultures, how we can change the world for better. Utopia is a world which is by itself mean unrealizable. But as long as culture exists, as long as human race exists, we can promise you people always will try to realize utopia. We can't promise you they will succeed ever, but I promise you they always will try. I will try to. Okay, I can't do this. Can we try? Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Okay. All right. I will start with one of the first work, which was done in 1989. This is a red wagon. Some of them very famous works. This is one of them. It's about failed utopia. Soviet Union was trying to build something new. In the beginning, you see these letters, which was about constructivism. These people who work with constructivism, the artists, they try to build something which wasn't there before. They were trying to build new world. The biggest mistake of Soviet Union in the beginning of people who tried to build this was to kill everybody who was before, to kill the old culture, all world. They were thinking that by destroying everything, on the remnants of this destroyed world, they could build a new one. Doesn't work this way, as we found out. Then you see the wagon, which doesn't have wheels, but it has pictures, paintings on the top, which depict Soviet life, happy future. Inside there is a panel, a very big panel, depicting the future life, except there is one interesting moment. There is a beautiful helicopters, landscapes, factories, houses, no people. Why? Because in Soviet Union, they were building a new world, but it wasn't intended for us. It was intended for some imaginary future people, not for real people. So they don't be in present there, they're not there. There is a bench, and people sit on the bench, visitors sit on the bench, they look at this panel, they listen to very sentimental music from 1930s, 40s, 50s, which is really typical Soviet, but kind of singing about hopes of people, happy life, love. And it's very engaging, it's very fascinating, and behind you there is in front of you, I'm sorry, there is a barrier, there is a light beyond this. When you look there, you see this imaginary future, and you feel that somewhere it's possible, maybe going to the future, maybe your past. Maybe your past was this kind of happy future that you never will achieve in the future, but it's already happened there. That's what total installation is. It completely takes you out of reality, and it brings you into some imaginary world of one person. Your personal world doesn't matter from which country you are, from which culture you are, what race you are. That's what total installation does. So that's inside what I was talking about. Next project, it's completely utopian project. It's a center of cosmic energy and center of creativity. Presumably, we will build somewhere in the world a center of cosmic energy. It's a completely innovative building, very conscious of surrounding, of all this problem we have now with the climate and everything else. And inside, we put chairs and very special equipment, which will try to find cosmic energy. There will be computer rooms, and people from all over the world can connect and trying to find the cosmic energy. Trust me on this, they will find it if we build this piece. The next one is the center of creativity. Anybody can walk in, there is a 15-minute session on creativity, and then everybody walk out geniuses. It's a very beautiful complex of the future. That's a model of it. We actually have a studio which has buildings, 4 buildings, one with paintings and two with models, or 3 with models. So anybody who would like to come, you can organize a tour, because museums do bring collectors and museum people to visit us. Next one. I don't know if it's about future, I don't know if it's about utopia, but it's how to meet an angel. I think people were trying for ages to meet an angel. Sometimes we're lucky we do, sometimes we're not. So when you're very desperate, what you should do, you build a ladder. You, of course, take some food with you. Then you go all the way up, and you have to wait, maybe for a very long time, but angel will come to save you. We have one built, really, 18 meters height. I don't know how many feet it is. I'm not so good at transferring this. In Germany. And the owner, it's a big park which is open to the public on the weekends. Owner sometimes call me for the last 11 years, and she tells me, you know, angel didn't come yet. The man is waiting. We built one in Amsterdam in front of mental institution, and it does work because people from mental institution write us letters and presents, and they said it give us hope that future can be better for us too, and angel always there to save us. We built recently one in Moscow, and somehow we decided, you know, it's about time we interfere and we bring the angel. So we put drone into the angel figure, and it's flying around. I mean, it's supposed to fly around. Somehow he doesn't want to fly around. Next one. The road of life. It's maybe about future, it's maybe about the past. We intend, this is unrealized project. Practically what we start in our house, in our place where we live, this building is Museum of Unrealized Projects. Some of them was realized, and then it's 15 years before we started. Some of them not. This is unrealized project. We built the road, 500 feet, or maybe longer, and people, and by the end there is these steps. You have to go all the way, then you go up, and you turn around, and you see the outline of human figures. That's what you left, what's left after you on this earth. Next. That's again the model. Next. Palace of Project. Palace of Project was built in England first time, in London, Manchester, Spain, and then finally come to New York. It was in New York, and then settled permanently in Germany. Palace of Projects, it's about utopian projects, built on three major ideas: how to make yourself better, how to make the world better, how to increase creativity. There is a lot of projects inside, three major ideas. As I said, it's covered with semi-transparent material. Light is from outside, nothing inside. Models, tables, and visitors can sit at the chair, look at the model, read the text. Texts are very different. For example, I'm homeless, I'm sitting here, but I intend to travel around the world if you just help me. And guess what? The moment we opened, by the end of the exhibition, there was a lot. His plate was full of money. Then there is another one project, a little one in this. How to increase creativity. I don't know if you know that, but horse can go up the stairs, they never can go down. So what you do, you select a high-rise building, you bring the horse, you walk up with the horse upstairs, then all the commotion starts because all the neighbors start screaming, they call the police. By the time the police arrive, I promise you will be very creative how to get the horse down. So that's the project. There is journey around the world, night journey, because you can travel around the world every night. And finally, the Ship of Tolerance. Ship of Tolerance you can go and see here in the park. We have approximately a couple of thousands of children participate, of all races, all religions. The project started in Siva as a project of wind. The ship as a meaning of people to communicate, to spread the culture, to spread everything, because at that time we didn't have internet. We didn't even have selfies. I mean, I don't know how people survived. But they managed to go with the ship all around. Then it was in Sharjah, and you know, people there said that we do need tolerance all around the world because people very often are afraid of each other because they don't know different cultures. They're transfer the childish fear into adult life. That's what we're trying to eliminate from the very beginning. When you're a child, it's much easier for you not to notice the color, not to notice the sexuality problem, not to notice practically that the other person is different, because actually they're the same. What they see in front of them, it's a friendly face. They start communicating, they become friends. Believe me, they're going to make this future better. The project was done by now 17 times in 16 countries. Some of them continue, they keep the ship, they declare themselves a state of tolerance, they move the ship around every year, children make new drawings for the ship, and that's how we intend to continue with different projects about Utopia and how to make this future better. You're next. Who's next?
Thank you, Emilia. I'm going to ask Matthew to, as a scholar of the Russian avant-garde and someone who has studied this construct of utopia, if you could make some comments about the Kabakovs and just the idea of utopia.
I think it's the human quality, the scale is important. The idea that we tend to think of utopia as an abstraction, but in fact utopia is grounded in everyday experience. So the fact that the artworks transform into, say, installations, all sorts of feelings that you have that are everyday feelings get mobilized. And parts of your memory that you typically don't mobilize when you're interpreting artworks come into play. So they tend to take you back to your own childhood, and they tend to play upon your own hopes and fears that you once had. You probably put them away in some part of your psyche, but then they can come back. And I think that's one of the things that perhaps the original Soviet avant-garde was too much of an adult project. It was for adults, it imagined adults, that we were all adults, and we have quite a few characteristics that don't live in that world. And we're used to only utilizing those aspects of our childishness that are the most self-destructive. But then we have those constructive childish components as well. So maybe they'll be mobilized. And I might say that the ship of tolerance, to me the most important characteristic of tolerance is doubt, to doubt things. It's good to believe things, but it's also interesting that children are very skeptical about things. They want to ask questions. They want to wonder why. And that also strikes me as a crucial component of being tolerant. Other people have different answers. You should be interested in their answers, not just your own.
Interesting, thank you. Hoor, you've been working on some projects you shared with me that are based, coming out of the Sharjah Biennale, but also moving into new, the dimension of architecture. Could you talk about projects, and especially as someone who has initiated them? You know, where does it begin, and how do you involve community?
Is this working? Yeah. I have to say, we really started with Ilya and Emilia Kabakov with the Ship of Tolerance that you saw as an important project to work with the communities and to engage a lot with education. But there are other projects that we worked on together, the blue carpet, the memorial to useless things. So there are a lot of projects that we worked together and did an exhibition that brought in communities and created a new understanding. And I think what I really like about the work of the Kabakovs is there's a humor in the work that comes. So the memorial to useless objects, the blue carpet where you have to see on the ground and look close and interact with the work, whereas in museums, you know, you have to look up at paintings, but the way we had it was on the carpet, and then people were invited to come down. So a lot of these installations that really invite you to enter these spaces, as Emilia was saying, are really important to engage with people who are not just museum goers. You're not putting paintings on a wall for people who already have the history and the background, and that's what Emilia was saying about creating a space, an internal space. And we've been doing a lot of projects like this in Sharjah, looking at the future generation, and the Ship of Tolerance follows that. And we have a project with the Sharjah Architecture Triennial that looks at the rights of future generations, looking at climate change. We have a lot of projects that look at coexistence, so working with artists from the Global South. So I think these are all commonalities in everything that we're doing, and very important these days, especially with governments trying to divide and walls coming up.
So do you see that as utopian?
I don't know if I would refer the word utopia. I mean, utopia is different to everybody, right? And I think that's the whole idea of the project, of what is a utopia and what is your idea of what utopia could be. I think it's a responsibility that we have. I think Emilia said it really well to the children outside. She said, this is your future. And I feel like my generation is the generation that has to do things for the next generation. Otherwise, a lot gets lost, because each year or each generation, it gets much harder to fix the world. So we all have to kind of get together, and to do something with children at this stage, I think is really important.
I just want to add something. When we come to Sharjah first time, there was nothing there. Nobody in the area, in this part of the world, knew about contemporary art. Artists maybe, yes, but no government, no officials, there was nothing there, no galleries, no biennale. Right now, a lot of you are dealers and curators, and you are engaged there in this area. But Sheikha, who was the first person, and I know you're very modest, you maybe not want me to say this, the first person who brought contemporary art, who introduced it to people there, wasn't easy, because there was a lot of restrictions, you understand. It's a completely different culture, which sometimes we think we understand, but we don't. We think it's very restrictive, it's complicated. It is complicated, but people live with this culture the same way we live with ours. We just have to be there and see, and she made it possible, which is very important today. It's very important for culture, it's very important for understanding, and it's probably important for survival of all of us, there and here too.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, actually, yeah, because I think with a lot of restrictions that happen, culture is the only space really to discuss things and make things happen. And I emphasize this again, it's a responsibility.
Right. Well, you just anticipated I was going to ask you more about it, because it sounds as if the biennials that you are setting up and have set up have a great deal of sort of social engagement and activism that are a part of that. Talk a bit about how that works in creating those connections in your community. How do you think about that? How are you building that into the structure of your biennial?
I think the first thing is to think of what is the community, right? Like who are the people around you? What is the region? You have to really figure out where those people are from, what their background is, and how you can relate to them. And then start a discussion and work with exhibitions and artists. So I think artists are the best spokespeople when it comes to a lot of these things. We work with community projects. We work with, we've had artists who work with the sailors that come from India and then dock right outside the foundation. We've done many projects there. We work with construction workers. We've worked with children. You know, I think that's really about, if you're an institution, you have to really work within your community. Otherwise, you're just another private space for the, for the art world elite.
Exactly. Matthew, I want to draw you into this. So going back to the early Russian avant-garde, that too was built on community engagement and trying to bridge between the utopian ideal and its sort of application into the lived world. It didn't exist for very long, but can you comment on a bit about what the ideas were behind that, and perhaps kind of why did it fall apart?
Well, that's.
I know that's probably an entire course that you give to your students.
Yeah, that is, unfortunately, yeah. I think that the way that we've understood collectively the Soviet avant-garde, and I'm happy for someone to disagree with me, is that it imagined bringing art into life and that we would somehow transform life according to aesthetic criteria. And this would lead to a renewed existence that hadn't existed before. And that's a brilliant idea. It's a wonderful idea. And it's great for it to live in museums and in paintings and in sculptures and all of those different places and in films, but it's not great for it to come into reality. And I think one of the great things about the Kabakovs' work is that it simultaneously makes you cognizant of the existence of the Soviet avant-garde and all of its ambitions and dreams and hopes, but incredibly skeptical about them at the same time. And I think that's exactly where we should be. Today, I might suggest that we have this absence of any imagining of the future, and that's what's so destructive. It's particularly destructive given the climate crisis that's almost unimaginable. So, so much of the climate art, let's call it, I think is a kind of degraded form of socialist realism for the 21st century. And I think that the Kabakov's art, on the other hand, really manages to bring the full range of these feelings, these ambitions for the future, and very real fears of what has gone on in the past. So it sort of brings everything together in one package for me. So that's nice.
Hoor, you said that you say that the arena of culture is a place where we can do this kind of imagining. How far can you push it in your environment?
Until you get shut down, basically. I mean, you have to try. There's certain ways where you can have a conversation without going that far, but you have to be very smart and creative about it. It's like, trying to come down the stairs, right? So it's constantly a challenge. I've had many, many, many challenges. I've been in many terrible situations, but we still continue the work that we do because it's important to do it.
Emilia, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I think I'll open it up to questions from the audience. This idea of utopia that you started out by saying it's not really located in Russian history or Soviet history, it's something more universal, right? But surely this transition from one culture to the next does have some difference. So maybe you could comment a bit about what differences you have found in bringing the ship of tolerance around the world, and in addition to the universality of it. Could you sort of share some insights?
I don't think there is a big difference bringing ship of tolerance because we work with children, and at certain age, children are not affected much by adults' problems. I mean, they don't really care about, as I said before, race or sexuality. They do care very much about family situation, about violence, about wars. They're afraid of they have the same fears we have, and they talk about this. When we come to each community, we try to find out what the problem is. For example, Chicago is violence, it's gangs, it's guns, it's a situation which children know very well, family problems. So we prefer teachers to talk to them, not even us, because I had here an episode where kids didn't want to draw. They actually tore the materials. They said, we're not going to do this. And the teachers had to talk to them and explain what the project is, what's the meaning of tolerance. Because they said nobody can help us. There is a gangs, we get involved, we get killed. It's complicated. It's very, very complicated everywhere. For example, in Sharjah, I think that was the first time children were drawing, right? I said teachers told me that some of them was the first time actually making drawings. But it's wonderful was seeing video when the girls they were in gloves and they take off the gloves and they take off the shoes. I said, why shoes? I didn't understand why they took off the shoes to make this drawing. Obviously, drawing was something elevated over everyday life. It was a higher level of consciousness for them. So they took off the shoes, they started making drawings.
What about Cuba?
Oh, yes, we were the first, actually, since 1958. We have a satellite project for the Ship of Tolerance with the music. As you saw today, we bring young musicians, some of them younger. These guys grow up with us for the 14 years, so they start very young, but they now in colleges all around or finish colleges, but they still come when we ask them to come. We start children as young as 8, 10 years old. We found them through friends to different music schools, you know, and now I even start finding them on Facebook. We have a boy from Afghanistan who, strangely enough, playing flamenco guitar. We were very surprised. Why flamenco guitar? Because he said what happened during the war in Afghanistan, he couldn't go to school, and the only channel available on internet was Spanish. So he's incredibly talented. He is now here, and if anybody want to give for his scholarship, because we did, and we still need some money for him to be able to go to college, there are some people you can contact about how to do this. It would be very nice. We first brought children from America and Russia to Cuba since '58. We had a 6-month fight with State Department, who said you can't bring American children to Cuba, impossible. I had a very big fight with one collector who was from Cuba, I'm not gonna name. I'm seriously bad fight. She said, I will talk to Hitler and Stalin. And I said, sure, I will. Maybe war wouldn't happen if somebody talked to them. We went to Cuba, we brought finally on the last day, we explained that, you know, Russian let us do it, Cuban let us do it, America is not gonna let us do it. And they did it. We went to Cuba, we brought American children, they played together with Russian and Cuban, then we brought Cuban children to the United States, and we brought them to Russia too. Some of them become dancers, some become musicians, some drop the music, happens too, choose another profession. But when we come to Cuba, every child of Havana participates in the project. People meet us on the street with screaming, why Americans don't like us? We are more Americans than Americans. And it was a big event in Cuba of a reunity, of kind of friendship. And children still communicate. They didn't drop each other. They're still in friends. They visit each other. They go together to some concert. And that's how it's goes all around the world.
Fabulous. I think we have time for a couple questions if there's anyone who wants to ask a question of our panelists.
We're going to have concerts tomorrow by the ship, and day after tomorrow in Cultural Center. So if anybody has free time to visit, it's close by here, 2 o'clock, please come. We have more than 100 children from different countries on the stage, and they're really good.
Well, Matthew, Hoor, Emilia, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Stephanie Cristello. I'm the artistic director of EXPO Chicago. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce 2 very special participants on this year's symposium on Utopia. Eduardo Gizzoni from Skira and Denise Swendell-Poret, who is the author of Painting the Stage, a beautiful catalog. We have both trade copies as well as a special edition that was in a box designed by Mario Botta, available for signing and purchase with the artist and author. So please welcome them to the stage. They're going to just give a few words about the publication, the process, and then we'll welcome everyone for the signing. So Denise and Eduardo, please.
Yeah. Yes, hello everyone. It's nice to see you, and we're very happy to welcome you to our book signing of Painting the Stage. My objective is to make you all passionate about it by the end of my presentation. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank Stephanie and EXPO Chicago, and also the Kabakovs for being so supportive of us in realizing this presentation, having the books available for signing. I'm going to say a few words about the book and what it means, what it represents. and then allow the author, Denise, who is here next to me, to speak more in depth about it. So the book, Painting the Stage, which you see on the stand next to the stage, is extremely significant in the panorama of the visual and the musical arts, because it's the first book to trace the intertwining of these two artistic forms. Specifically, it traces 200 years of opera stage design at the hands of visual artists, starting from Schinkel's iconic stage design of the Magic Flute by Mozart, and progressing all the way to experimental and modern developments in the field, like stage design by Robert Indiana, David Hockney, Wilson, and of course the Kabakovs, the protagonists of the previous panel. As a publisher working for Skira, we publish something between 250 to 300 books a year. And this book is exceptional because of its depth of research, its visual beauty, and its attention to detail. It's an extremely, not only is it a must for art lovers and music lovers alike, but it's an example of something very rare and hard to come across in publishing. A book that is made according to these quality standards, which are lacking. Therefore, as a publisher, working daily with books, I would say that it is truly phenomenal. And an example to authors and to publishers alike regarding what a book should strive for and achieve. On a final note, before I allow our author to speak, along with the book, Painting the Stage, we'll also be presenting its luxury edition, which you actually see on the table with the copies. This luxury edition is a limited print run, sculpted by the Archie star Mario Botta, who perhaps you're familiar with because he did the old SF MoMA. Shaped like a theater, this wooden sculpture houses a copy of the book and also a numbered and signed print by the Kabakovs, which relates to the work they have done for opera, primarily The Fly. So I hope that after we finish speaking, you'll join us to look at these beautiful products and explore them in further detail with us. Absolutely. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Eduardo. I'd also very much like to thank Stephanie for making this possible. I'd also like to thank Viola Konevsky, the mastermind behind the music that accompanies the Ship of Tolerance, and for bringing this all together and for allowing me to have my small part in it. And I must say, Eduardo's really presented the book very well, so I don't want to talk for very long, especially because I really want to hear the Shostakovich again. And it was absolutely marvelous. I think it's extremely moving and very rare to hear this piece. And Joseph and Sophia and the quartet have done a really exceptional performance of this. So not to delay any further, I would just like to say very briefly how much I'm indebted to Emilia Kabakov, not just for this beautiful edition, but also for the ways in which she's supported the book over the years. One of my very first interviews that I did for Painting the Stage was with Ilya and Emilia Kabakov. And it was about an opera that they were designing in Munich at the time. It was in 2010. And it was an opera by a contemporary composer called Peter Oetves. The name of the opera was, or is, The Tragedy of the Devil. And I went to Long Island to talk to them and discovered this incredibly beautiful universe in which they live. And also experienced the generosity of the Kabakovs, who took the time to explain to me how an installation, a sculpture, can become a stage design for opera, and to see the ways that this operated. And in the case of Peter Oetves, it was very much taking in an existing work. It's the Arch of Life from 2002, that Peter Oetves saw as a further expression of the opera and what he was trying to confer in this opera, The Tragedy of the Devil, which is a Faustian story about loss of illusion and the predominance of evil. And the way that the Kabakovs articulated that and made it work, and just observing that artists at the level of the Kabakovs, when they get involved in opera, become something incredibly dynamic, and it's a completely other level. And this was very instructive for me. And at that point, my book took another turn. And I'm forever grateful to the Kabakovs for that. I also remember when I left Long Island, Ilya said to me, well, you want to write a book about stage design and artists doing stage design, you better hurry up and go and meet William Kentridge, the great South African artist. He's going to do The Nose by Shostakovich in a few months, and you should really talk to him. So this kind of encouragement and instruction I got from the Kabakovs over the years, and so they've had a huge impact on the book from the beginning through to the end. And so 10 years later, here I am signing my book with Emilia here and her family, and part of this event, this wonderful discussion and concert. And I'd just like to say thank you very much, and let's hear the music. I think that's what we want. Okay, thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you all so much. So now we are going to have additional signings as well. Ilya Kabakov on Art by Matthew Jesse Jackson, as well as The Experimental Group by Matthew Jesse Jackson. Both will be distributed by Modo Books from Berlin. And we are going to have also the concert for a fly play while the signing takes place. So please join us, and we encourage you to get some of these amazing publications. Thank you.
you.